Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a muddy medieval village where your teeth are already aching and you haven't even had breakfast. You're barefoot, the morning fog is still hugging the ground, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster with respiratory issues is wheezing out its crow. You duck out of your tiny, timber-framed cottage, swatting away a cloud of gnats, and stretch your arms in the damp air. Your mouth feels dry and vaguely furry. Whatever you dreamed about last night didn't include a minty finish. This is not a world of bubblegum toothpaste and sonic toothbrushes. It's a world where your best chance at oral hygiene lies somewhere between fireplace ash and hope. You probably won't survive this era's dental regimen, but let's pretend you do for the sake of sleepy storytelling. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start your day by rinsing your mouth with a bit of water. Probably not fresh. Definitely not cold. The village well is a short walk away, but your wooden pail leaked last night, so you make do with what's in the clay jug near the hearth. That water's seen better days. Still, a quick swish is better than nothing, and you spit it into the garden where a cabbage is bravely trying to exist. Inside the cottage, your mother is already tending the fire. That's good news for your mouth, actually. The fire produces ash, gray, flaky, and surprisingly useful. You pinch a bit between your fingers. It's soft, like powder, and slightly warm. This is your toothpaste. Ash is mildly abrasive, which is just what you need when your teeth are wearing yesterday's porridge. No one calls it brushing, of course. That's a modern idea. You take a frayed linen cloth, wrap it around your finger, dab it in the ash, and rub it along your teeth. It tastes like yesterday's fireplace, and maybe also regret, but it gets the job done. You hear your neighbor hacking up something impressive across the alleyway. Maybe she's trying to clean her throat the same way you're cleaning your teeth. Outside, chickens scatter and recongregate in confusing patterns. One of them is pecking at a pile of what may or may not be last night's stew. Your teeth, meanwhile, are getting a proper medieval massage. You work the ash around the gums, careful not to go too hard last time you made yourself bleed. That stung for 3 days. You think about what old Greta said last week: if your gums bleed, it means you've been cursed by a jealous goat. Historians still argue whether peasants genuinely believed such things or just liked blaming goats for everything. Still, the taste of ash is better than nothing. There's a small pile of mint leaves on the windowsill, wild, scraggly things your little brother picked during a long walk home from school. You pop one in your mouth, not for freshness, but for distraction. The morning light slants in through the tiny slits in the wall, bouncing off the soot-stained beams. You wonder briefly if rich folks have something better. They do, sometimes, but they also bleed from the mouth so it evens out. And with that, you're ready to face another day. Teeth kind of clean breath, only mildly terrifying. You step outside with a grin or something close to it. What even is toothpaste in the world you've woken up to? You wouldn't recognize the name, and if someone said minty fresh fluoride gel, you'd assume they were describing a wizard's ointment. But the concept scrubbing the gunk off your teeth before it becomes a problem is oddly timeless. The tools and textures vary wildly, but the instinct, very human. In your village, most folks have their own concoction. Ash is the crowd favorite, but plenty of households add their own signature twist. Crushed herbs like sage or rosemary go into the mix if you're lucky enough to have them. Their flavor is strong, their scent stronger, and people believe they chase the rot from your mouth. Historians still debate whether these early herbal mixes were more symbolic than effective, but their popularity was widespread. Some daring souls even add salt. Not the fine, elegant salt you'd find in a modern kitchen, but thick, flaky crystals that crunch like gravel. The theory is that it scrapes off plaque. The reality is that it scrapes off everything, including a bit of enamel. But hey, that tooth won't rot if it's gone. You think back to the time your neighbor borrowed a chunk of old stale bread, blackened it in the fire until it crumbled like chalk, and added it to her dental mix. Charcoal, she called it proudly. Said it was the cleaning secret of saints and monks. Of course, her front tooth fell out the next month, but that could have been unrelated. Could have. In your own house, there's talk of trying new things. Your uncle recently brought home a bit of dried fennel from the market. It smells delightful, like the idea of cleanliness, if not actual hygiene. You grind a bit between your fingers and mix it into your usual ash. Fancy stuff. Makes your morning routine feel almost luxurious until you catch your reflection in a tarnished spoon and see all that black grit lodged between your molars. There's no such thing as commercial toothpaste, no porcelain sinks, and certainly no water pressure. Your sink is a shared basin that also functions as a dish cleaner, baby bather, and occasionally foot soak. You use it sparingly. Some people chew herbs instead of scrubbing. Basil thyme, even parsley, all thought to sweeten the breath. You chew, you spit, and you pray the lingering goat smell fades. In fact, one traveling friar once told you that sweet breath kept demons at bay. Whether he meant real ones or metaphorical tooth demons is still unclear. Interestingly, in some parts of Europe, people tried powdered deer antlers crushed into a fine dust. You've never seen that, of course. It's expensive, exotic, and frankly suspicious. But it goes to show the creativity people employed when it came to dental maintenance. This morning, your cousin mentions that she heard someone in the next village uses chalk mixed with mead. Mead for teeth. That seems like a crime against alcohol. You imagine bees filing complaints with the local bishop. Still, the idea intrigues you. You wonder what it might feel like to swish something sweet, even if just once. Your own mix is bitter gritty and has the aesthetic of volcanic ash, but it's yours. As you finish your cleaning, your gums feel raw but functional. You smile experimentally. No blood, no loose teeth, no sudden pain. Victory. You toss the cloth near the hearth where it'll be used again tomorrow. Or maybe by someone else. There's only one after all. You step out into the light. The wind smells like manure and distant bread. Your teeth, for what they are, feel fine. You remind yourself to keep your mouth closed while talking. It's not modesty, it's strategy. Ash herbs and urine. Yes, you heard that right. If you think medieval dental care was rustic before, wait until you discover the full ingredients list. This isn't your grandmother's herbal rinse unless your grandmother lived in 1347 and believed that fermented human waste held secret healing powers. Because in some corners of the medieval world, it absolutely did. The idea of brushing your teeth with ashes already seems wild, but toss in a dash of strong-smelling ammonia, and now you're cooking with, well, horror. Aged urine, preferably left in a clay pot in a sunny spot, was sometimes used as a kind of mouthwash or cleaning agent. It's rich in ammonia, which, believe it or not, can kill bacteria. That little chemistry bonus is something even modern science acknowledges. Still, let's not pretend that makes it pleasant. You, however, are not quite that adventurous. Your mother, though. She swears by the amber rinse, which is exactly what it sounds like. She claims it whitens teeth and keeps the devil out of your gums. Historians still argue whether such folk practices were based on medicinal knowledge or desperate experimentation, likely both. Your own routine sticks to safer territory. A bit of ash from the night's fire. Some dried chamomile if it's around. A twig from the hazel tree chewed at one end until it splits like a paintbrush. That's your version of a toothbrush. The chew stick method is incredibly common across medieval Europe, especially among those who can't afford linen rags or herbal powders. You gnaw the tip until it frays, then use the fibrous end to scrub your molars. It's oddly satisfying, like flossing without floss. The twig tastes earthy bitter, slightly nutty. You wonder if the tree minds. Sometimes you catch your uncle dipping the twig in honey before brushing. He claims it's for the antimicrobial properties, but you suspect it's just an excuse to eat honey. Either way, it's better than the vinegar mixture your cousin tried last week. That one made her lips pucker so hard she couldn't smile for an hour. The village healer, a wrinkled woman named Agnette, claims she knows the best recipe, ash myrrh and rabbit bile. You never ask where she gets the bile. You just nod politely and back away slowly. But she's respected. People go to her when their teeth throb like drums. She keeps a pouch of powder tied at her waist, and whenever someone asks what's in it, she just smiles. Her teeth are better than average. Suspiciously so. But here's the real kicker. Some folks brush only after they eat meat. Not every day, mind you, because meat is rare. But the idea is that meat gets stuck, ferments, and invites mouth demons. So after a feast, you can expect to see your neighbors scraping their teeth with knives, rubbing them with herbs, or swishing warm water mixed with vinegar. The tools may vary, but the instinct to cleanse is ancient. Children are often tasked with gathering ingredients. You remember wandering through the woods as a child, plucking mint leaves, chewing on licorice root, or trying to crush lavender flowers between stones. Not all of it worked. Sometimes your gums swelled up like overripe plums, and your breath smelled like wet hay. But it was a learning curve. There's a running village joke that whoever finds the perfect paste will marry rich. So far, no one's even managed to kiss someone without them flinching. You think about this as you rub a bit more ash on your molars. Not because you're courting anyone, but because even in the Middle Ages you want to feel a little clean. As you spit into the hearth, a puff of ash rises into the morning light. It glows for a moment, catching on the breeze, then vanishes like a whispered secret. Toothbrushes, as you know them, don't exist in your world. There are no handles, no bristles, no clever battery-powered gadgets humming in your palm. What you do have is a rag, some ash, and the infinite adaptability of the human finger. You reach for your usual tool, a strip of linen cloth that's seen better decades. It's been rinsed and dried so many times it's more whole than fabric, but it's soft, which matters. You wrap it around your index finger like a little ghost costume, dab it into your ash and herb blend, and get to work. It's an odd sensation, scrubbing your teeth with your own hand. You have to stretch your lips wide, not too wide. You don't want to pop a sore at the corner and reach in to rub each surface with care. The ash grits under your nail. The smell is like a fireplace and wilted parsley. But after a few strokes, your teeth feel noticeably less fuzzy. This method isn't yours alone. It's common across Europe, especially in poorer communities where even chew sticks are a luxury. Linen's reusable and fingers come free with every person. It's not glamorous, but it's functional. Your older brother, ever the innovator, once tried using a wooden spoon handle. He shaved the end to a blunt point wrapped cloth around it and called it a scrub rod. It lasted a week before he splintered his gum and gave up. Now he uses a pig bristle stuck into a hollow bone tube tied with twine. It looks like a hedgehog on a stick and smells like old stew, but he swears by it. Across the village, you hear stories. One woman dips her cloth in vinegar and soot, claiming it gets rid of toothworms. Another uses beer sediment murky, foamy dregs as a polishing agent. Historians still argue whether such traditions were based on empirical trial and error or simply passed along through sheer force of habit. When your finger can't reach a tight corner between molars, you pick up a sliver of kindling from the hearth, soften it with spit, and scrape gently. This is your toothpick. It smells faintly of oak and the last rabbit stew. You're careful not to jab too deep. You've seen what infected gums look like. Once a man in the next village lost half his jaw to bad blood. His nickname became Whistle because of the sound he made when he talked. For special occasions, say market day or the bishop's visit, your family breaks out the fancy mix: ash salt, dried mint, and a few drops of honeyed mead. It's applied with a clean rag, and there's a brief moment right after rubbing it in when your mouth feels genuinely fresh, like stepping into a cool stream on a summer day. That feeling lasts for maybe 7 minutes. Your grandmother remembers a time when people didn't bother cleaning their teeth at all. She says it with a sniff, as though the past was full of savages. This coming from a woman who stores dried fish heads under her bed for flavor emergencies. Still, she has all but 3 of her teeth, which is impressive. They're like little yellow fossils, but they're hers. Your own smile, reflected dimly in a patch of polished tin, isn't perfect. There's a chip in your left incisor, a slight wobble to your lower right molar. But there's no swelling, no pain. That's more than many can say. As you finish your morning routine, you rinse your rag in the wash basin and hang it by the hearth. It'll dry stiff as bark, but it'll do. You flex your jaw, feel the pleasant tingling in your gums, and step out into the sunlight. Somewhere nearby, a child giggles, a pig squeals. Your teeth may be medieval, but at least they're clean by your standards. It's strange to think the village oven, mostly a place of warmth bread and gossip, also plays a part in your dental hygiene. But here in the Middle Ages, every resource is multi-purpose. If it burns, you can probably clean your teeth with it. Today you approach the communal oven, just after the morning loaves have been pulled. The scent of hot rye and scorched flour clings to the air, and blackened crumbs scatter like pebbles across the stone threshold. You don't come for bread, though. You're here for soot. The inside of the oven, crusted in charcoal and ash, is a gold mine, if you're cleaning your teeth, that is. Not all soot is created equal. The best stuff, villagers say, comes from hardwood fires, oak ash, or beech. Pine burns too oily. Elm smells like regret. You take a flat chip of scorched wood flake off some char and store it in a pouch tied to your belt. Soot and charcoal aren't just fillers. Their fine grit polishes the enamel, removing debris and surface stains. Modern dentists might raise eyebrows, but the abrasiveness in small amounts works surprisingly well. Historians still debate whether peasants knew the chemistry behind this or simply noticed that their teeth looked better after chewing burnt bread. Back in your cottage, you grind the soot between two stones until it's almost powder. You mix it with a hint of dried thyme, borrowed from the widow down the lane, and rub the mixture on your molars. The texture is rough, like cleaning your teeth with sandpaper, but it brings a certain shine. You smile into the spoon again. Still yellow, but gleaming. Not everyone shares your enthusiasm. Your younger sister claims soot makes her tongue tingle and once accused it of turning her tooth gray. That's not the soot, your father grunted. That's the honey-rotted molar you never clean. He's not wrong. Despite all your efforts, tooth decay is a constant threat. The village diet grains pottage the occasional sweet sticks to your teeth like glue. There's no sugar avalanche like in later centuries, but honey-dried fruit and porridge residue are more than enough to create problems. So you scrub, you rinse, and you hope. There's also a belief passed down from an old monk who once traveled through that charcoal draws out poison. You're not sure about poison, but when your cousin tried chewing a burnt stick during her toothache, she claimed it soothed the scream. You later found out she was also drinking ale, so the verdict remains inconclusive. One day, your friend Tom decides to try something new. He collects soot, mixes it with goose fat, and brushes with it. The result, slippery, black-stained teeth and a mildly panicked goose. The fat makes the soot stick better, he says. It coats the rot. You make a note not to share spoons with Tom. At the edge of the village, the baker's apprentice swears by breadburn. That's the black crust scraped from the bottom of overbaked loaves. He says if it's hard enough to break a tooth, it's strong enough to clean one. His smile is surprisingly intact, though one front tooth slants like it's been trying to escape. You pack up your own mix soot thyme, maybe a flake of salt, and hide it under a loose floorboard. Not because it's valuable, but because your sister keeps using it to clean her shoes. Some things are sacred. As the oven cools and villagers come for their midday meals, you nod to the baker, who gives a soot-smudged grin in return. You both know the oven bakes more than bread. It bakes cleanliness of a sort. You open your mouth to greet a neighbor and immediately regret it. The warm puff of air that escapes is not flattering. You've brushed, yes, but even a solid rub with soot and thyme can't mask the unmistakable tang of medieval breath, equal parts onion sour beer and regret. Bad breath in your village isn't just a social faux pas, it's a matter of suspicion. Folks whisper about foul spirits that leave your mouth open to curses. Some say that breath can turn a cow sour or cause milk to curdle in its pail. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were literal or metaphorical, but the anxiety they caused was very real. You remember old Edric, who once claimed his wife's breath summoned a plague of beetles to his cabbage patch. She denied it, of course, blaming the manure pile instead. Either way, the cabbage died, and so did the romance. So what do you do about your breath? Well, there's chewing things. Lots of chewing. Fennel seeds if you're lucky, parsley if you're not. Mint is a village luxury, growing wild near the riverbanks, where few dare to walk without boots. When someone brings back a satchel of it, you chew carefully, savoring the slight zing and telling yourself you're now immune to demons. Then there's wine vinegar, not for drinking too sour, but for gargling. It stings. It bubbles in your mouth, like a potion, trying to decide if it should heal you or dissolve your tongue. Some people dilute it with water. Others use it straight. You tried it once, and your lips felt like they'd been scoured with nettles. Your aunt swears by a roasted apple clove poultice. She roasts apple skins with clove buds until they blacken, crushes them, and holds the mix between her teeth for a full minute each morning. The scent is strong, spicy, and vaguely hopeful. She's convinced it draws out rot. She also talks to chickens, so her authority is debated. One friar passing through claimed that the key to good breath was silence. If you don't open your mouth, no one can judge your odor. Monks rarely offend, he said with a wink. You tried this approach for a day. It worked, but people assumed you were hexed. There are more aggressive methods too. A handful of villagers use burnt bone dust mixed with ground cloves and salt. It's harsh, bitter, and sticks to your molars like guilt. But some say it forms a barrier against decay. You just say it tastes like burnt regret. You once heard that in Italy, wealthy nobles chew on cinnamon sticks and aniseed. You can't even imagine what cinnamon tastes like, but you bet it doesn't come from behind the latrine, which is where your cousin found his latest miracle sprig. Still, even with all these folk remedies, your breath often returns to baseline by midday. The constant cycle of chewing, spitting, and muttering against demons becomes part of your routine. But there is one final trick: drinking warm barley water infused with sage. It's bitter, like oversteeped tea, but you feel cleaner after. The taste coats your mouth in an earthy blanket, and for a brief moment, you dare to smile at the blacksmith's apprentice without fear. He doesn't flinch. Progress. As the sun climbs and the fields beckon you, rub your tongue against your teeth. Still grainy, but better. You breathe out slowly, hoping the wind carries it away from others. You're not perfect, but in this world, not terrible is practically a compliment. If anyone in the village understands teeth, or at least pretends to, it's the herbalist. Her name is Mathilde, and she lives in a hut tangled with ivy and suspicion at the edge of the woods. People say she was born during a thunderstorm and once cured a boil by whispering to it. You don't know if that's true, but her breath always smells like mint and mystery, which is more than you can say for yourself. You visit Mathilde on a damp afternoon, your jaw aching from what you assume is a rebellious molar. She welcomes you with a crooked smile and motions toward a stool fashioned from 3 logs and a piece of what might once have been a door. Her hut smells of rosemary earth and something faintly rotten. She rummages through her bundles and bottles, muttering names of herbs: sage for strength, myrrh for infection, marjoram for breath, and a curious one, bloodwort, which she claims keeps the root spirits calm. Historians still argue whether these plant associations were drawn from observation lore or sheer poetic whimsy. For your complaint, she prescribes a chewable paste made of crushed sage vinegar and a bit of dried fig. The sage is antibacterial, she says, and the fig feeds the flesh so the tooth won't rot. You nod solemnly, as if you understand herbal logic. You don't, but the fig part sounds promising. She also hands you a stick of licorice root to chew on. It's naturally sweet, and after a few bites, your mouth feels like it's been dusted with cinnamon and earth. It's one of the better experiences you've had with medieval dentistry. For the ache, she suggests pressing a clove. Yes, the spice against the tooth. Don't chew it, she warns. Let it argue with the pain. That's Mathilde speak for clove oil numbs nerves. It actually works for a while. You leave her hut smelling like a festive stew and feeling oddly reassured. Later, you share the clove tip with your neighbor, who promptly swallows hers and accuses you of trickery. Still, word spreads, and soon Mathilde's hut sees a trickle of visitors, each with their own tale of woe. Toothaches, bleeding gums, foul breath, even jaw cramps from chewing too much hard bread. She offers each person a different mix: bark scrapings, herbal rinses, even warmed honey mixed with ash. Not all her advice is practical. She tells one man to sleep with a garlic clove under his pillow to scare the rot back into hiding. Another is told to hang a jawbone of a pig over his door. Symbolic, apparently. You're not sure if it's working, but his porch now smells like disappointment and charcuterie. Despite the oddities, you start to believe there's wisdom in Mathilde's ways. She listens, she experiments, and she doesn't yank anything out unless you beg her to. Her teeth, notably, are intact, stained crooked, but present. That counts for something. You begin keeping your own stash of herbs, dried sage, in a pouch mint tucked behind your ear, a clove or two in your pocket. It's a small insurance policy against the creeping rot. And in a time when dentists carry pliers instead of diplomas, prevention is everything. As you settle in for the evening, you chew a sliver of licorice root, close your eyes, and thank whatever spirits watch over molars. If the ache comes back, you'll see Mathilde again. If it doesn't, you'll still visit, mostly for the tea and the strange stories. In your village, even the chickens get involved in dental care, not intentionally. Of course, they're more interested in bugs and breadcrumbs than oral hygiene, but they do contribute, especially when you're a child learning the ropes of medieval cleanliness. You remember being 6, your front teeth wobbling like jelly. Every bite into a crusty loaf felt like playing dice with your gums. Your mother, practical and unflinching, tied a string around the offending tooth and the other end to a coop door. You don't recall if she slammed it shut or if a curious chicken yanked it open, but the result was the same one less tooth and a slight distrust of poultry. Childhood oral care is generously informal. Most kids start by mimicking the adults, rubbing ash on their teeth with a fingertip, gnawing on chew sticks, and spitting ceremoniously into the hearth. It's less about hygiene and more about belonging. You're part of the ash-rubbing clan now. Congratulations, your little cousin has taken to using willow twigs. They're soft when chewed and mildly medicinal. The local healer says willow bark has pain-soothing juice. Historians would later call this salicylic acid nature's aspirin. At the time, you just think it tastes like soggy bark. Some households dip their children's twigs in honey before handing them over. Not out of sweetness, but bribery. You'll clean your teeth if they taste like dessert, right? The flaw in this plan becomes clear when your cousin refuses to stop brushing his teeth, now sticky brown and vaguely buzzing with bees. Your family doesn't have honey to spare. You use warm water from the hearth and a twig you've personally chewed into compliance. It's a modest morning ritual. No mirrors, no sink, just you, your reflection in a bucket, and your own persistence. The chickens, meanwhile, peck at the scattered ash and herbs near the hearth. They don't care what you're doing, as long as you're not stepping on them. Once you caught one trying to eat your linen cloth. Whether that counts as dental interest or culinary confusion is unclear. Children also learn through cautionary tales. You were told about a boy from 2 villages over who didn't brush and grew mushrooms in his mouth. The truth was a fungal infection, probably, but the image stuck, along with your lifelong fear of damp basements. Games get involved too. You and your friends would dare each other to chew the weirdest root or see who could spit mint juice the furthest. Once you all tried Matilda's breath balls, tiny orbs made of dried lavender and sage meant to be sucked, not swallowed. Your cousin ignored this. The resulting stomach ache lasted 2 days and became legend. Still, you remember the pride you felt the first time your teeth didn't hurt during winter. You'd been scrubbing regularly with an ash and thyme mix, rinsing with tepid water, and chewing licorice root like it was candy. Your breath wasn't sweet exactly, but it was no longer weaponized. Mothers often lead the charge, tucking mint leaves into aprons, dabbing children's gums with wine vinegar, and muttering about keeping the rot away. Fathers less involved tend to mock the whole affair until their molars crack on burnt barley. It's in these small routines, teaching a child to chew a twig, encouraging them to rinse after meals, laughing at their ash-covered chins, that oral care becomes more than survival. It's ritual. It's shared knowledge. And yes, it's slightly ridiculous. As night falls, you catch your young cousin mimicking your motions, cloth around the finger, gentle scrub, dramatic spit. He grins, half toothless but proud. "Did I do it right?" he asks. You nod. "Perfectly terrible," you say. And somewhere a chicken clucks in approval. When toothaches strike, and they always do, it's not a question of if you'll seek help, but where. In your village, pain in the mouth often means a trip to Matilde the herbalist, or a whispered prayer to Saint Apollonia, the patroness of tortured teeth. And sometimes, both, just to be safe. Toothaches are terrifying in the Middle Ages. They're not just annoying, they're omens. A throbbing molar means more than just rot. It means imbalance, bad humors, maybe even punishment. You wake up one morning with pain in your jaw so sharp, it feels like your skull is trying to fold in on itself. Your mother clucks her tongue, shakes her head, and starts grinding cloves. "A spirit's got hold of it," she mutters. You know the routine. First, chew a clove. Hold it there. Breathe through your nose and try not to cry. If that doesn't work, it's on to the more mystical methods. Some swear by tooth charms, small beads or bones carved with symbols and worn around the neck. Historians still argue whether these were seen as magical tools or just psychological comfort, but their popularity spans continents. Matilde offers her own solution, a paste of mustard seed garlic and a splash of vinegar. You apply it to your cheek, not your gums. "Draws the pain out," she says. Your skin burns and tingles, but the tooth still throbs. She raises an eyebrow. Time for the spell then. She lights a small bundle of dried rosemary and sage, waving it near your face. She mutters something in Latin, or maybe it's just a dramatic hum, and then taps your forehead with a stick. That's for St. Apollonia, she explains, and this, she flicks water from a bowl in your direction, is for St. Blaise, just in case the pain travels down your throat. If all else fails, there's the toothworm theory. Yes, really. People believe tiny worms live inside your teeth, wriggling and gnawing until pain erupts. The cure: smoke them out. Some villagers blow henbane fumes into their mouths. You tried it once. It tasted like burning socks and made your ears buzz. You still think the worms laughed at you. For more extreme cases, people whisper about Saint Apollonia's prayer. She was martyred, legend says, by having all her teeth pulled out. So now, she watches over toothache sufferers. You recite her verse under your breath. Blessed Apollonia, ease my pain, clean my mouth, preserve my brain, chase the rot and worms away. Grant me peace for one more day. Your aunt swears it worked for her. Your cousin says he prayed it once, and his tooth fell out that night, which he insists was definitely a miracle, not a coincidence. Children fear toothaches more than monsters. One boy, sleeps with a jawbone of a sheep beside his bed, convinced it wards off the tooth spirits. Another rubs garlic on his temples every morning. No one knows if it helps, but he certainly doesn't have many friends. In the rare case someone gets desperate, they resort to charms, toad bones strung on twine, owl feathers dipped in wine, or inscriptions written on animal skin and worn like amulets. These trinkets are tucked into sleeves buried beneath doorsteps or tied to bedposts. You, for now, stick with cloves and Matilda's poultice. It's not glamorous, but it dulls the pain enough to sleep. And that in this world is a gift. As you settle in for the night, the ache still hums like a low drum beat in your jaw, but you've done all you can. Spells cast, herbs chewed, saints invoked. If your tooth is still cursed by morning, at least you know the chickens aren't to blame this time. You'd think the worst part of a rotting tooth is the pain. But no, it's the smell. That sickly sweet rot, like fermented onions with a hint of barnyard, announces itself before the ache even hits. You know someone has a bad tooth before they say a word. It's in the way they flinch from cold water, the way their breath wilts nearby, herbs, the way they keep touching their jaw like it might detach. Your own experience begins with a twinge in your back molar. It's subtle at first, just a pulse when you chew on the wrong side. You try to ignore it. Everyone tries to ignore it. That's stage 1 denial. Stage 2 is when you start pressing it with your tongue obsessively, like checking a loose floorboard. Stage 3 is when the swelling starts. Mathilde takes one look at your face and says, "It's ripening." That's not comforting. She leans in with a candle, tilts your chin, and peers into your mouth with an intensity usually reserved for tracking lunar eclipses. "Black at the base," she mutters. "Could be nerve rot, or maybe a spirit nesting." Historians still argue whether such diagnoses were metaphorical, spiritual, or simply based on what things looked like under poor lighting. She prods gently with a stick. Pain flares up your temple and down your neck like lightning made of knives. That confirms it. Your tooth has gone bad. Rot in the Middle Ages wasn't subtle. Without proper cleaning, plaque hardens into calculus, which digs into your gums like tiny daggers. Infection sets in. Sometimes pus oozes from the gum line. Other times a cyst forms, and the whole area balloons. One boy once swelled so badly, his eye partially closed. He was renamed Half-Wink for the rest of his days. There's no x-ray, no antiseptic, no anesthesia. Just guesswork, and whatever Matilde pulls from her mystery basket. She offers a charcoal compress to draw out the fire and gives you a tincture of wine steeped with cloves, yarrow, and a single beetle carapace. You don't ask why. You just drink it. Your mouth tastes like dirt and confusion, but the edge dulls. You sleep that night sitting upright with a rag wrapped around your head and a mint leaf between your teeth. It's the peasant version of high-end dentistry. By morning, the pain is back and worse. The rot has spread. Your molar wiggles ever so slightly when you push it with your tongue. It's like living with a tiny traitor in your mouth. In extreme cases, villagers have reported spontaneous lost teeth, simply falling out during a meal. One elderly man claimed he sneezed and shot a tooth across the room. It landed in his soup. He called it a blessing. For others, the infection goes deeper into the jaw, the sinus, even the bloodstream. No one calls it sepsis, of course. They just say he sickened from the face. People with advanced decay sometimes die of fever, their final days, filled with groans and sour breath. You don't want to be one of them. So you make a choice. It's time to see the extractor, not a dentist, not even Matilde, but the man with the iron tools, the one people whisper about, the one who keeps a bucket of teeth near his stool like trophies. You swallow hard, taste something metallic, and prepare for the next step removal. Because once the rot sets in, there's only one way out. They call him Jank the Puller, not because he's gentle or even particularly skilled, but because he gets the job done. He's the village's designated tooth extractor, though he's also the barber, the bloodletter, and once stitched up a pig. You wouldn't call him trustworthy, but you also wouldn't call anyone else. You find him in a lean-to next to the tavern, sharpening something that looks halfway between tongs and a torture device. His hands are stained with something dark blood, ale, ink. Probably all three. He looks up and grins. Tooth giving you trouble, eh? You nod, pressing your jaw. The pain has spread into your temple. You feel feverish. Your breath smells like betrayal. He gestures to a stool made from a beer barrel. Sit. The tools aren't sterilized. There's no rinse, no numbing agent, no comforting background music. Just wind chickens and the distant thud of someone chopping wood. He doesn't ask permission. He just pries your mouth open and squints inside like he's reading a riddle. Ah, he says, back molar, angry fellow. He picks up a long, hooked instrument. This'll tickle. It doesn't. It burns. He wedges the tool around the root, twisting as he presses. You feel pressure first, then sharpness, then something white-hot that ricochets through your skull. Your legs kick involuntarily. He growls, holds still, and clamps your shoulder. There's a crack, a wet pop, and then the sound of something dropping into a metal bowl. It echoes like thunder in your bones. You try to sit up, but he holds you there, dabbing your mouth with a rag that smells like fermented onions. It's out, he says cheerfully. Mostly in one piece. He holds it up. You look away. Barber surgeons like Jank are common in medieval Europe. They cut hair lance boils and pull teeth. Some use iron forceps. Others simply twist with fingers wrapped in cloth. A few rely on heated needles to kill the root first. Most just go in swinging. Historians still debate how much training these men had. Some apprenticed, others just started. You suspect Jank falls into the second group. He offers you a drink of something harsh, probably mead, possibly paint thinner. It numbs the shock at least temporarily. Your mouth is bleeding. Your jaw throbs, and your head spins. But the pain from the rot is gone, replaced by something new and cleaner, the ache of violence. Some patients faint, some scream, some die of infection. You stagger out into the light, one tooth lighter, a little more humbled. Behind you, Jank tosses the bloodied rag into a pile and hums as he wipes down his tools with yesterday's beer. Your cousin asks what it felt like. You tell him, like being struck by lightning from the inside. He nods solemnly. So, normal then. There are no follow-up appointments, no gauze, no antibiotics. You rinse your mouth with warm ale that night and pray for no swelling. You also offer a whispered thanks to Saint Apollonia, though she seems to have taken a vacation. Oddly enough, the next day you feel better, lighter. Your tongue keeps exploring the empty space where your tooth used to be, like a child checking a missing window pane. It'll never grow back, of course, but the pain, at least for now, is gone. And in a world without floss, fluoride, or gentle dentists, that counts as a success story. It's tempting to think that nobles had it better. More food, more privacy, more teeth. But that's not quite the truth. When it comes to dental care, the difference between you and your local lord is more about who suffers with you than how. Sure, your lord has a private chamber and a silver goblet while you spit ash into a fireplace and share your water jug with a goat. But his toothpaste, nearly as dreadful, made of burnt bread, powdered bone, ground coral, even crushed pearls, because if it sparkles, surely it must clean. Historians still debate whether such recipes helped or just looked good on a gilded shelf. You hear tales of noble women brushing their teeth with red wine and sage infusions. Sounds elegant, right? Until you realize the sage was often boiled in urine, then steeped for 3 days. For strength, the recipe insists. And the wine. It was probably half vinegar. You'll stick with soot, thanks. Noble dental tools were fancier, but not necessarily better. Ivory toothpicks, silver scrapers, gold tweezers. You once heard of a baroness who had a brush made from badger bristles. But badgers don't give up their fur easily. She lost a servant trying to acquire them. Most nobles didn't do their own brushing anyway. That task fell to a servant, often a maid with steady hands and no fear of breath. Imagine cleaning someone else's molars while pretending not to notice they reek of eel pie and unspoken privilege. Your lord, rotund and red-faced, likely suffers from tooth decay just as much as you. His diet is richer. More meat stews, dried fruits, honey pastries, but also stickier and far more sugar-laden. His teeth may look polished, with his pearl paste polish, but underneath, they're riddled with silent rot. Noble children are taught courtly manners, including dental rituals. Rinse with rose water, chew cloves after banquets. Never show missing teeth, when smiling bad optics. You, meanwhile, are taught to chew quietly and avoid biting into anything harder than your resolve. The barber who pulled your tooth last week, he also visits the manor. The difference is that he wears shoes when he's there. Same tools, same technique. You've heard the Lord once fainted from a molar extraction. He was given 3 days in bed and a roast duck. You were given half a mint leaf and told to get back to work. One traveling friar swore he saw a nobleman pay for a tooth transplant. A peasant's healthy tooth was pulled and hammered into the Lord's gum socket. Fit like a charm, he said, ignoring the part where the donor walked away toothless and unpaid. Historians still argue whether these transplants ever worked, or were more symbolic, like wearing someone else's luck. In artwork, nobles often have idealized smiles, perfect white teeth, gracefully parted lips. You've seen the paintings, but you've also seen a noble's mouth mid-laugh. Gaps, stains, and at least one incisor threatening escape. Money buys polish, not immunity. There's poetic justice in it. While you scrub your teeth with soot and chew twigs beside a smoky hearth, your lord lounges on a velvet chair, sipping honeyed wine and dabbing at a sore gum with lavender-soaked linen. You both suffer. Only he does it with better upholstery. As the sun sets and you lean against a tree to rest your jaw, you wonder how many lords are doing the same. Mouths, open tongues, poking at abscesses, servants scurrying for vinegar. And for a moment, you smile. Because for all his gold, your teeth aren't that much worse. You're 29 years old and already have the mouth of a pensioner. In the Middle Ages, that's not unusual. If you've still got most of your teeth, you're either very lucky or very quiet about your pain. Dental decline begins early. Childhood means soft bread porridge and the occasional fruit harmless enough. But as you age, your diet turns starchy sticky and aggressively chewy. Hard crusts, salted meats, dried peas, barley cakes that double as roofing material. Your teeth take the brunt of it. By your mid-teens, you're likely missing at least one, maybe two. By your 20s, it's a game of attrition. A chipped incisor here, a molar ground down to a stump there. You once met a man of 35 with only 4 teeth left spaced like fence posts. He smiled anyway. Historians still debate whether early dental loss was accepted as normal or mourned in quiet frustration. Probably both. Tooth loss isn't just inconvenient, it's a health hazard. Rotten teeth breed infection, and infection spreads. A gum abscess can lead to fever, delirium, even death. But without mirrors or modern medicine, most folks don't realize how bad things are until it's too late. Your cousin lost half his upper teeth last winter. One fell out during a snowball fight, another during Mass. The third simply vanished between dinner and dawn, as if it packed its things and left. He speaks with a whistle now, and eats mostly broth. Women, especially mothers, fare even worse. Pregnancy leaches calcium from the body, and it's commonly believed that a child costs a woman a tooth. Some say 2. Your aunt has 6 children, and only a single working molar. She uses it like a nutcracker, and she guards it like treasure. When people die, their teeth often remain the last white bits in the grave. Peasants rarely leave behind heirlooms, but teeth. Those survive. You once saw a skull, dug up in the woods, grinning with one perfect canine. Everyone speculated whether he'd been a warrior, a thief, or just lucky in molars. Diet plays a huge role. You've never seen sugar in its raw form. But honey is common in the Lord's kitchen. And dried fruits, dates, figs, raisins cling to teeth like gilt. Nobles may suffer more elegant decay, but it's decay all the same. You, meanwhile, scrape your daily pottage from a bowl and hope it's bland enough not to cause damage. Cleaning helps ash herb's twigs, but only slows the inevitable. There's no fluoridated water, no dentist reminding you to floss. You floss once accidentally with a bone sliver in a rabbit stew. It ends poorly. Toothless villagers adapt. They gum their food, suck broth, mash bread, in ale to soften it. Some carve wooden pegs to fill gaps. One old woman you know whistles through her cheeks and claims it improves her prayers. You're not convinced, but it's oddly charming. Despite everything people smile. Gapped, crooked, stained, it doesn't matter. A smile is still a smile. You've seen a blacksmith with 3 teeth and a laugh so loud it shakes roof beams. You've seen lovers grin at each other with mouths full of ruin. It's not about beauty. It's about surviving another day with enough teeth to chew the crust. You run your tongue across your gums. One molar loose, another chipped. But you're still here. Still eating, still telling stories with your mouth wide open. And in this world, that's something worth smiling about. If you asked 10 historians to describe medieval dental health, you'd get 12 different answers, and probably an argument. That's because so much of what we know about medieval mouths is stitched from guesswork folklore and the occasional skull pulled from a monastery grave. For years, people assumed everyone in the Middle Ages had horrendous teeth, blackened, shattered, crawling with decay. But modern archaeology has painted a more nuanced picture. It turns out that some peasants had surprisingly good teeth at least until their later years. Why less sugar? No mass-produced candy. Fewer acidic drinks. Your average peasant didn't wake up to orange juice and go to bed with soda. They ate what they grew, and while that meant hard bread and tough meat, it didn't always rot teeth the way Victorian sweets did. That said, many still suffered from periodontal disease. Gums inflamed teeth loose in their sockets. It's the invisible killer of the mouth. And there wasn't much they could do about it short of gargling with brine or chewing something spicy and hoping for divine intervention. One myth you've likely heard is that medieval folks believed in toothworms, tiny creatures that burrowed into enamel and caused pain. It sounds ridiculous, but to a world without microscopes or germ theory, it made perfect sense. You hurt. Something must be wriggling. So they smoked the worms out, literally. Burnt herbs were funneled into the mouth through hollow reeds. You've never tried it. You don't plan to. Then there's the myth that everyone had rotted black stumps. Not true. Some skulls, recovered from rural graves, show near-perfect sets of teeth, albeit with heavy wear from coarse bread and stone-ground flour. That's right, the very act of chewing could sandpaper your enamel. Bread wasn't just food, it was exfoliation. Historians also debate the role of dental hygiene in social status. Did nobles really care more? Or did they just have better records? You've read scribes' notes about tooth powders made from coral myrrh and even crushed emerald. The theory was that precious substances could preserve precious mouths. But emerald dust, it turns out, is a terrible idea. Peasants like you weren't ignorant of hygiene, they just had fewer options. Still you brushed. You chewed mint, you rinsed with wine or water, you invented your own rituals, and sometimes miraculously they worked. One persistent myth is that medieval people didn't care about their teeth, that they lived in filth and smiled through the pain. But anyone who's had a toothache knows it's impossible to ignore. You'll try anything for relief. Wrap your head in cabbage leaves, hold a toad, pray to a saint, gargle goose grease. If someone says, "This cured my cousin," you'll try it. And finally, the myth of the medieval dentist as a deranged butcher. Okay, that one holds up. But not always. Some barbers, some monks, some herbalists were genuinely careful. They passed on knowledge, what worked, what didn't, and created a patchwork of dental wisdom that still echoes today. You sit back now, fingers laced over your stomach, and think about how far we've come, and how much was lost along the way. Maybe Matilde's poultice had something modern medicine still can't explain. Maybe clove and ash weren't so foolish after all. In your mouth, the absence of that one molar still feels strange. But the rest, still hanging on, still biting through barley cakes and dried apples, still doing their job. And if anyone tries to tell you that your medieval ancestors didn't care about their teeth, smile wide. Let them see just how much effort went into this grin. You wake with the sound of coals settling in the hearth, a soft clink of cooled ash, and embers shifting like sleepy bones. It's still early. The sky outside your narrow window, pale with approaching light. Your jaw aches faintly. Nothing serious, just the echo of yesterday's chew stick scrub. You stretch, sit up, and begin the first ritual of the day, tending to your teeth. The hearth is already warm, thanks to someone's early rising. You scoop a bit of fine ash from the edge where it's cleanest and pour a few drops of boiled water into your ceramic bowl. You mix in a pinch of dried sage collected last month and nearly gone, and swirl it with your finger until it makes a gritty paste. The linen rag, already stiff from yesterday's use, is softened over the fire, dampened and wrapped around your fingertip like a knight preparing for battle. You dab it in the mixture and begin the gentle scrub molars first, then front teeth, careful not to catch your tender gum line. The soot works quickly, buffing off the residue of last night's barley stew. Your mouth tastes like burnt herbs and smoke, but it's familiar now, comforting in a strange way. You hum quietly as you work, listening to the slow creak of the cottage beams and the scratch of chickens outside. Your brother is already outside fetching water. Someone drops a pot. Someone else curses the cold. Rinsing comes next. A quick swish with warm water, spit into the corner of the garden where nothing quite grows. Maybe that patch of earth is the cleanest in town, sterilized daily with herbal backwash. After you chew a sliver of mint leaf, it's weak, a little wilted, but it makes your breath less offensive. You think of Matilde and her endless bundles of dried things, roots and seeds, and odd-smelling moss, and smile. You haven't needed her in weeks. Midday brings another check-in. After a bite of dried meat and hard bread, you chew a willow twig. You work it between your molars, slowly and patiently, feeling for soft spots or sudden pain. None come. A small victory. You share your twig with a younger cousin. Show him how to fray the end, how to scrub gently, how not to poke too hard. He listens with wide eyes. You tell him the story of the man who ignored a toothache until he couldn't speak, until his face swelled like a swollen turnip, and they had to cut his cheek to let out the evil air. It's not a bedtime story, but it gets the point across. By evening, your mouth feels tired but clean. You chew licorice root while watching the fire die down. You talk softly with your sister about a new herb. Matilde mentions sweet flag, something that grows near the marsh. Maybe it helps, maybe it's nonsense, but you'll try it. Everyone always tries. The final rinse comes before sleep. You swish with warm water again this time, steeped with a little rosemary. You spit into the hearth. It sizzles softly. You lie down on your straw mattress, mouth clean, jaw steady. There's a hollow where a molar once lived, and a faint ache pulsing beneath the gum like a memory. But it's quiet now. No throb, no heat, just the residue of effort and ash. You've done all you can. In a world where soot and sage stand in for science, that's more than most. You close your eyes, exhale the scent of burnt mint and dried thyme. And then, suddenly, the mattress is gone. You're barefoot on warm stone, looking up at a clay tablet chiseled with lines you can't quite decipher. The air smells of frankincense and goat hair. A woman beside you grinds something brown into powder, maybe roots, maybe old teeth. And then she hands you a cup. It's time to gargle. Yep, you're in ancient Mesopotamia, and tonight's topic is mouthwash. Or rather, the bizarre, fragrant, sometimes horrifying history of what people have poured into their mouths in the name of cleanliness and social grace. Don't worry, we'll keep it PG-13. But between spices, salt water, and certain liquids, you're absolutely not expecting you're in for a ride. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from a faraway place, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Sumer, around 2500 BCE. You're not a king, not a priest, just someone with a few goats and a tendency to get bad breath. The local healer has a recipe, crushed myrrh river clay, and maybe a sprig of sweetgrass if you're lucky. The goal: purify the breath, appease the gods, and not offend the nostrils of anyone within sniffing range. Sumerians didn't have mouthwash the way we think of it, but they had plenty of ways to freshen up. Their daily rituals included rinses made from beer sediment and ash mixed with oil or honey. The theory was less about bacteria, since germ theory was millennia away, and more about balance. Smells in ancient belief systems indicated moral or spiritual states. Bad breath could suggest disease, sin, or demonic interference. So that daily rinse was more exorcism than dental hygiene. You hold your nose and tilt the cup. The taste: bitter clay with a back note of burnt barley. But you don't gag, because honestly, it's not the worst thing you've been prescribed. Your neighbor once had to chew on crushed bones for a toothache. You'll take clay. Historians still argue whether the Sumerians' aromatic brews were used primarily for medical or religious reasons, but archaeological finds a few clay tablets with recipe instruction. Even a tiny strainer used to filter out chunks suggests they took the business of breath quite seriously. And of course, you can't ignore the cultural layer. Smell meant status. The wealthy had access to rare gums and imported spices. You make do with local herbs and the occasional gift from a traveling merchant, maybe a pinch of cinnamon if your cousin's caravan makes it back. At the temple, breath mattered even more. Priests chewed on dried herbs before rituals, ensuring they didn't offend the gods with their exhalations. Offerings included bowls of sweet-smelling resin, some of which ended up in mouths before it did on altars. It's humid tonight, and the moonlight dances on the river. You swirl the rinse in your mouth, spit it into a jar, and tuck it under the woven mat you sleep on. Why save it? Because reusing ingredients was practical, and no one liked to waste imported herbs. And just before you drift off, you hear the soft chewing of your neighbor across the courtyard. Maybe it's fennel. Maybe it's dried fish. You'll ask him tomorrow. Or not. Breath was a delicate topic, even back then. The sun rises slowly over the Nile, its first rays gilding the limestone walls of your courtyard. You stretch beneath a linen canopy, the scent of myrrh already drifting through the air. Today, like most days in Thebes, around 1300 BCE, you'll need to do something about your breath. You pad barefoot across a cool stone floor to your family's shrine niche, where small jars line a clay shelf, one filled with powdered frankincense, another with crushed lotus seeds. Your father's is marked with a hieroglyph for protection, but you're after your mother's jar, the one with the crocodile dung. Yes, you heard right. Egyptians had a flair for mixing the divine with the downright disturbing. That jar of crocodile dung, dried and mixed with natron salt, honey, and mint, was believed to ward off bad breath and evil spirits. The logic crocodiles were sacred, terrifying, and paradoxically symbols of fertility. Chewing their dried leavings brought you closer to their power, while the mint helped distract from the rest. You pinch a bit of the powder into your mouth and rinse it with warm beer, not to swallow, just to gargle. The bubbles fizz as you swish it back and forth. It's an experience, earthy, salty, with a slightly fermented zing. Egyptian physicians, more priests than doctors, believed in the balance of bodily fluids. Smell was a sign of imbalance. A foul mouth might suggest too much heat in the liver, or a misalignment of the ka, the life force. Remedies weren't just about physical health, they were about moral harmony. And while dung might seem excessive, it wasn't the only exotic option. Wealthy Egyptians could afford rinses of cinnamon oil and cardamom steeped in vinegar. Tomb paintings even show nobles holding cones of scented fat on their heads that melted throughout the day, perfuming their hair, skin, and possibly their breath by osmosis. You step out into the street, passing market stalls packed with dried fish, onions, and garlicky lentil stew. The smell hits you like a chariot. Everyone smells alive. So it makes sense that etiquette demanded countermeasures. Public breath was political. If you were speaking to a scribe or tax collector, A sweet-smelling mouth implied literacy, wealth, and self-control. If your breath stank, you might as well wear a sign that read, "Destined for serfdom." Historians still argue whether certain prescriptions in the Eber's Papyrus, an ancient medical scroll, were genuinely medical or half-magical incantations. Some mouthwash recipes involve spitting eastward after rinsing or chanting invocations to Thoth while holding a mint leaf under your tongue. Tonight, your uncle comes to dinner. He works in a perfume workshop and always smells like cloves and smoke. He shows you a new blend tamarind paste and resin soaked in goat milk. Supposedly, it calms the tongue and pleases the gods. You nod politely. You'll stick to crocodile thanks. As night falls, you sit by a brazier, letting frankincense smoke cleanse your space. Your mouth feels oddly clean. Maybe it's the mint, maybe the placebo effect of ancient belief systems, or maybe you've just accepted that the past was weird, wonderful, and slightly gross. You swish one more time and spit into the sand, watching it hiss as it dries. The Nile hums beyond the wall, carrying whispers of breath across dynasties. It's late afternoon in Athens, and the sun beats down hard on dusty white columns. You're leaning against a cool marble wall in a shaded corner of the agora, eyeing a stall that's selling vinegar-dried figs and peculiarly mouthwash. All right, not mouthwash per se, but a cloudy mixture of wine salt and herbs in a clay jug labeled with a cheerful little owl. The vendor claims it's endorsed by a student of Hippocrates. Whether that's true or not, you're parched. Your breath tastes like goat cheese and olives, and curiosity is a powerful motivator. You buy a ladleful, step aside, and swirl it around your mouth. It burns. There's nothing gentle about sour wine mixed with sea salt and crushed oregano. You try not to cough, but your eyes water a little. In classical Greece, oral hygiene was as much about social standing as it was about health. While there wasn't an official term for halitosis, philosophers and orators were acutely aware that foul breath could ruin a debate or worse, a date. And since ancient Greeks placed great emphasis on rhetoric presentation and symmetry, a clean mouth was practically a civic duty. You trudge toward the Acropolis, your tongue still tingling. A fellow traveler shares a tip chew on mastic resin from the island of Chios. It's bitter at first, but it freshens your breath, and according to Aristotle, helps strengthen the gums. You take a small piece and start chewing. It squeaks between your teeth like rubber, but tastes vaguely like pine in old temples. Historians still argue whether the Greek practice of rinsing with ox bile and vinegar was meant to clean the mouth or act as a form of discipline, punishing the body into obedience through bracing discomfort. In Hippocratic medicine, balance was everything. A sour rinse was thought to cool the body and dry excess phlegm, which, if unchecked, could rise from the lungs and create foul breath headaches or even melancholy. That's right. Bad breath wasn't just gross. It was a gateway symptom to sadness. You pass a young woman reading aloud in a shaded courtyard. She pauses to rinse with a concoction of thyme tea and ash. You nod respectfully. The ancients didn't mess around with their herbal knowledge. Thyme was antiseptic, and ash had alkaline properties. Together, they were the fluoride of their day if you squint hard enough. There's even a popular remedy making the rounds goat's milk, mixed with crushed myrtle leaves and a drop of honey. A local healer swears it calms not just the tongue, but the hot breath of rage, which is poetic and vaguely threatening. You reach the top of a hill, just as the sun starts to dip. The Parthenon glows gold, and nearby, a group of students debate ethics. One of them hiccups and discreetly spits into a jar. You notice a sprig of mint floating in it. Even in the most noble of pursuits, oral upkeep never takes a holiday. Before heading home, you spot a sculptor carving tiny figures. One holds a cup, another chews a leaf. The gods, he says with a wink, also like sweet breath. And as you rinse one last time, this time with clean spring water flavored with lemon rind, you realize something funny. Despite the vinegar, the salt, and the occasional goat product, the Greeks were on to something. They knew the mouth was a window to the soul, or at least to social success. You're sitting in the atrium of a Roman domus, watching a servant fan the air with a peacock feather as your host swishes a mouthful of urine. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient Rome circa 50 CE was nothing if not inventive, and for Romans, no rinse was more effective or controversial than good old-fashioned human ammonia. Now, before you gag, understand this: Romans were practical. They believed in utility over squeamishness. Urine, particularly aged and fermented, was valued for its cleansing properties. It was even taxed under Emperor Vespasian. The ammonia content made it a powerful bleaching agent not just for laundry, but also for whitening teeth and freshening breath. You stare as your host finishes gargling and smiles broadly. His teeth do look unusually white. The scent, however, is a different matter. But he doesn't seem embarrassed. In fact, he's proud. This is an elite rinse, imported even, from Portugal. In crowded Roman cities, public urinals called philoloniki collected urine that was sold to launderers and dentists alike. If you were lucky, your household had its own collection jar. If you were very lucky, you could afford perfumed additives, rosewater sage, or even powdered marble. Your turn comes, and you're handed a diluted mix. You hesitate, but the servant nods politely. It's rude to refuse. You take a cautious swish. It's pungent, eye-watering, but surprisingly not as revolting as expected. There's a certain alkaline sharpness, like the first sip of an aggressive spirit. Historians still argue whether elite Romans actually believed urine-based rinses were medically sound, or whether it became a sort of grim, social flex look. How committed I am to oral hygiene. Regardless, the practice persisted for centuries. Of course, not everyone in Rome was gargling bodily waste. The poor often chewed herbs or used salt water. Soldiers carried dried rosemary or laurel leaves to nibble on between battles. And the temples distributed mouth-sweetening lozenges made of honey and charcoal dust for ceremonial use. You wander down a colonnade and pass a barber's stall. He offers a quick rinse of alum water mixed with crushed coral, believed to harden gums and kill breath-borne spirits. A soldier next to you jokes that coral only works if it's been blessed by Neptune himself. You smile, your breath still tinged with something vaguely alchemical. The city smells of olives, sweat, and wet limestone. At least you blend in. Later that evening, at a dinner party, conversation turns inevitably to oral care. One guest boasts that his rinse contains imported Ethiopian myrrh and powdered emeralds, Another swears by donkey milk boiled with basil. A woman in the corner mutters something about urine and saffron, and everyone nods impressed. It's a status game after all. Rome is full of strange rituals, and this is just another equal parts hygiene, superstition, and ego. As the night cools, you sit by a fountain, rinsing your mouth with plain water, savoring its neutrality. It may not whiten your teeth or impress your friends, but after the day's adventures, it tastes like ambrosia. You wake to the soft echo of bells in the cloister garden. Somewhere nearby, a monk is trimming rosemary by hand, his fingers stained green, his breath faintly fragrant with mint. Welcome to a medieval monastery where silence, simplicity, and fresh breath go hand in hand. It's the 12th century, and you're a lay brother in a Benedictine abbey tucked somewhere in the English countryside. The morning air is cold and still. Birds chirp from the hedges. You kneel beside the herbarium and begin your daily chore, harvesting ingredients for the abbey's breath-rinsing tincture. The monks here have refined a recipe passed down for generations. Mint leaves soaked in vinegar, mixed with a dash of honey and stirred with a sprig of marjoram. It's soothing aromatic, and best of all, doesn't involve any bodily fluids. You scoop a ladleful into a ceramic cup, raise it to your mouth, and swish. The mint cuts through the mustiness of last night's lentil gruel, and the vinegar tingles against your tongue. There's a faint sweetness that lingers at the back of your throat. In the monastic world, oral hygiene had both spiritual and practical roots. Cleanliness was a virtue, and monks, despite their vows of poverty, were surprisingly meticulous about their personal care. It wasn't about vanity, of course. A clear breath meant clear prayers. Foul odors were seen as distractions from divine focus. Historians still argue whether these early recipes were grounded in Greco-Roman tradition or homegrown medieval experimentation. But monastery herbals from across Europe include elaborate instructions for rinses, powders, and chewable pastes. Many list mint, anise, sage, and clove, all known for their antiseptic qualities. You pass the infirmary, where the apothecary is boiling a potent decoction of thyme and apple vinegar for an older monk with malbreath. He's also experimenting with charcoal lozenges wrapped in linen, early breath mints, perhaps. Meanwhile, the kitchen boys are chewing parsley after preparing salted fish. One mutters that Brother Thomas once fainted during Mass from the combined fumes of pickled herring and morning breath. You're not sure if it's true, but you appreciate the motivation. Of course, not everyone in medieval Europe had access to a tidy rinse made by monks. Peasants often made do with chewing on bark, burnt bread crusts, or even bits of wool soaked in ale. But if you were lucky or holy, you had herbs. Even among the clergy, opinions varied. Some stricter orders considered scented rinses too indulgent. A Cistercian abbé once wrote that mint-flavored water might tempt monks toward vanity. The Franciscan friars, on the other hand, actively distributed herbal mouth rinses to the poor as part of their charity work. Everyone deserves not to smell like a compost pile. As evening falls, you join compline prayers in the chapel. Dozens of voices chant in Latin breath, mingling beneath the candlelight. The air smells faintly of beeswax, pine smoke, and mint. Your mouth feels clean, cool, quiet. And as the bells toll again, you remember to rinse one last time before bed. not because anyone's watching, but because it's become a part of the rhythm, as steady and peaceful as the turning of the Psalter's pages. You awaken beneath a hand-woven cotton sheet, the air thick with the scent of sandalwood and sesame oil. It's early morning in Varanasi, around the 5th century BCE, and your mouth feels dry from last night's spiced lentils. But not to worry, Ayurveda has a remedy for that. You pad barefoot to the veranda where a brass bowl awaits. Inside is a golden liquid sesame oil warmed by the morning sun, faintly fragrant with turmeric. You dip a small ladle and bring it to your mouth. It's thick, nutty, and oddly calming. This is Gandusha, an ancient Ayurvedic oil rinse believed to draw out toxins, strengthen gums, and improve overall health. You swish it slowly, pushing it between your teeth and around your tongue, the oil growing more viscous as it mixes with saliva. According to Ayurvedic tradition, the mouth is the gateway to the body's balance. Each morning, practitioners perform dinacharya, a set of daily routines that include oil pulling, tongue scraping, and chewing medicinal herbs. Sesame oil is favored for its grounding properties, turmeric for its anti-inflammatory effects. Historians still argue whether these practices were primarily dental or part of a broader wellness philosophy, but ancient texts like the Karaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita dedicate entire sections to oral rituals, detailing everything from the ideal rinse temperature to the number of swishes required. You glance around as neighbors begin their routines. One man scrapes his tongue with a curved copper tool. A woman crushes neem twigs into a brush. A child gargles with warm salt water and spits neatly into a garden pot. It's communal, rhythmic, almost meditative. After a few minutes, you spit the oil into a clay pot set aside for this very purpose. Never into the street, it's considered impure once it leaves the mouth. You rinse again this time with warm herbal tea infused with holy basil. In the bustling market later breath becomes a subtle language. Sellers offer cardamom pods as change. Clove buds sit beside scales and weights. Conversation is close, intimate, and scented. If your breath offends, you'll know. A local healer offers you a chewable mix of betel leaf, fennel seeds, and a hint of camphor. It's spicy fresh and feels like a tiny forest blooming in your mouth. By evening, as temple bells ring and incense smoke curls into the air, you repeat the ritual. Another spoonful of sesame oil, another slow swish. Your day ends as it began gently, fragrantly, with oil and intention. And though modern science debates the precise benefits of oil pulling, there's no denying the peace it brings, a moment of stillness, of quiet health, in a world constantly in motion. The cherry blossoms are just beginning to bloom outside your window as you rise in Chang'an, capital of the Tang dynasty. It's the 8th century, and the city is waking slowly. Sellers unfolding silk canopies, tea steam curling from open stalls, and the sound of scraping. Not of rice bowls or sandals on stone, but of tongues. Your household, like many refined families of the day, starts the morning with a ritual of meticulous oral care. You reach for your jade tongue scraper, smooth, cool, and gently curved. With practiced motion, you run it along your tongue, removing the thin white coating the physician warned about. That coating, after all, could be a sign of imbalance, perhaps too much internal dampness or an encroaching cold. this wasn't mere vanity. In Tang, China, where appearance was art and medicine, a philosophy, the cleanliness of your mouth was thought to reflect the harmony of your organs. A coated tongue might indicate digestive trouble, a foul breath, possibly liver stagnation. So scraping it away each morning was as necessary as breathing. Next, you rinse. Your servant brings a small porcelain cup filled with a pale pink liquid plum blossom infused water lightly steeped overnight. It's cool, sweet, and faintly astringent. As you swish it around, you catch the scent of cloves and ginger rising gently behind the floral notes. Historians still argue whether these elaborate rinses were widespread or limited to the upper class. But records from court physicians, poets, and scholars all mention mouth care rituals as signs of cultivation. A clean mouth wasn't just about health. It was part of good lie or propriety. In your household, scrolls passed down from a retired herbalist ancestor, there's an entry detailing a rinse made from chrysanthemum tea and powdered agar wood. Said to ward off sorrow of the breath, it was often recommended for scholars studying late into the night. Your cousin, a minor official in the Ministry of Rights, carries a tiny tin of powdered licorice root in his sleeve. When he meets with diplomats, he discreetly moistens a pinch on his tongue to ensure every word is sweetened. Out in the city, apothecaries sell pre-measured rinses, powdered alum with dried orange peel, or fermented pear wine with drops of camellia oil. Street barbers will clean your ears, shave your neck, and offer a splash of mint tea for the mouth, all for a few coppers. You pass through the market and overhear two monks debating the merits of bamboo ash as a teeth whitener. One insists it purifies the breath, while the other swears by crushed lotus seeds mixed with powdered jade. Later that evening, as lanterns flicker to life and zither music wafts from nearby courtyards, you prepare your final rinse of the day. This time, hot water steeped with dried rose petals and Sichuan peppercorns. It's spicy floral and a touch-numbing ideal for quiet evenings and whispered poems. You swirl spit into a ceramic bowl and watch the petals settle in the dark. In a city of ink, incense, and etiquette, even your breath must whisper beauty. You crouch beside a smoky fire in the cool morning shade of a stone terrace deep in the lush highlands of the Yucatan Peninsula. The year is roughly 900 CE, and you're preparing for a ritual not with chants or incense, but with pine smoke and sap. As a member of a modest Mayan farming village, you're expected to keep not only your hands clean, but your breath too. Cleanliness, after all, is sacred. And in this world, sacred often smells of resin. You reach into a small leather pouch and pull out a wad of chicle raw sap from the sapodilla tree. It's sticky bitter at first, but soon softens into a chewable mass that freshens your mouth and strengthens your jaw. You chew slowly, methodically. The elders say it helps to align the spirit with the breath. Chicle was used both practically and ritually among the Maya. It served as a form of mouth deodorizer and a subtle meditative tool, flavored with mint lime peel or even crushed cacao. Husk. It was the ancient equivalent of chewing gum and one of the earliest. You move closer to the fire, where pine needles crackle. You breathe in the smoke, letting it fill your mouth before exhaling slowly through your nose. This smoky rinse and inhalation, more than a gargle, is believed to ward off bad spirits and neutralize foul odors clinging to the soul. Historians still argue whether these smoky breath rituals were daily hygiene or strictly ceremonial, but remnants of pine tar and sap-coated tools suggest it was not uncommon in daily life, especially before market days' weddings or offerings to the gods. Later, you watch a healer prepare a blend of crushed vanilla pods and wild orchid root. He mixes it with water in a gourd and offers it to a young woman preparing for a festival. She swishes it proudly, then spits onto the earth as a symbolic cleansing. Meanwhile, the village children chew roasted cacao nibs to fight tooth decay, while warriors preparing for battle are given tobacco leaves soaked in lime juice. The burning sensation reminds them to speak only with purpose. A traveling merchant tells you that in the capital city of Tikal, nobles chew jade dust-infused resins for both breath and beauty. Not only did it freshen the mouth, it left a green shimmer on their teeth, a sign of status and elegance. At night, as you rest on a woven mat beneath the stars, the taste of sweet sap still clings faintly to your tongue. The embers of the fire glow beside you, and you pop one last piece of chicle into your mouth, chewing slowly in rhythm with the cicadas. Breath in the Mayan world is life, and tonight your breath smells of jungle trees, cracked wood, and flowers you don't even know the names of. Cold wind rushes in from the fjord as you duck into a smoky longhouse in coastal Norway. It's the 10th century, and the hearth fire crackles with peat and pine. A burly Viking finishes swishing a mouthful of what smells suspiciously like fermented seaweed and mead, and then he spits into a wooden bucket at his feet. You glance down at your own cup. The rinse you're holding is a thick, murky blend, stale ale ash from the hearth, and bits of dried kelp. It's not exactly appetizing, but up here practicality rules. And Norse dental hygiene, like their cuisine, isn't for the faint of heart. You take a cautious sip and swish. It's sour, smoky, and briny with the faintest hint of something burnt. You resist the urge to cough. Among the Norse mouthwash wasn't codified like in the great empires of the East, but oral practices certainly existed. Vikings chewed pine bark rinsed with diluted beer and used fibrous twigs as rudimentary brushes. Their belief system tied personal cleanliness with honor, bad breath. That was a stain on your reputation, as shameful as dull blades or cowardice in battle. Historians still argue whether these mouth rinses had ritualistic value or were purely functional. Some sagas suggest warriors chewed herbs before combat to mask fear-scented breath. Others mention herbal rinses used in romantic pursuits. Either way, the Norse understood that a foul mouth was impolite. In wealthier households, rinses included ingredients like juniper berries, birch ash, and honey. Some recipes even called for boiling mead with crushed mint leaves, a rare luxury, but a pleasant one. You hear of a jarl's wife who allegedly mixed swan's blood and vinegar as a love potion and breath freshener. Probably apocryphal. Probably. A woman near the hearth offers you a sprig of angelica root said to purify the mouth and protect against sea rot. You chew it slowly, noting its bitter bite and peppery finish. It numbs your gums a little, which might be the point. Out on the water, sailors carry satchels of dried seaweed to chew during long voyages. Not for nutrition, just to stave off the stench of fish guts and salt-burnt mouths. And when trading with the Saxons or the Franks Vikings, sometimes rubbed their teeth with ash to appear more civilized. No one wants to smell like a spoiled barrel of herring during negotiations. Before bed, you kneel by the fire and rinse again, this time with plain rainwater and a pinch of lichen powder. It's clean, earthy, and oddly calming. You spit it into the fire and watch it hiss into steam. There's no glamour in Viking hygiene, but there's honesty. Life is hard, but you can still try not to smell like low tide. The scent of rosewater drifts through the arched corridors of an Ottoman palace, mingling with the warm aroma of cardamom coffee. It's just after the morning adhan, and as a court scribe in 16th century Istanbul, you're about to perform a quiet, dignified ritual, the breath cleanse. You reach for a small, copper basin and uncork a delicate flask filled with rose water, infused with crushed clove and a hint of mint. You swish the liquid carefully, avoiding the urge to gulp. It's luxurious, expensive, and mildly sacred. In the Ottoman Empire, cleanliness wasn't just a matter of etiquette. It was deeply embedded in spiritual life. Islam places strong emphasis on bodily purification, especially before prayer. And while rinsing the mouth badmata is required in ablution, many Ottomans went far beyond that. Breath, after all, accompanied every spoken word in prayer. It needed to be worthy. You spit discreetly into a cloth and pat your lips dry. The taste is floral, faintly spicy, and cooling. You feel refined. Elite households across the empire maintained elaborate hygiene rituals. Merchants and scholars carried scented mouth flasks. Concubines chewed on date palm fiber brushes dipped in cinnamon oil. Imams favored rinses made from vinegar and pomegranate peel before delivering sermons. Historians still argue whether some of the more lavish mouthwash recipes were rooted in actual hygiene or just courtly performance. A vizier reportedly used a rinse made from distilled rose saffron and pearl dust. Was it effective? Debatable. Was it impressive? Absolutely. In the bustling Sarsha cellars offer small sachets of breath-freshening spice blends. Fennel mastic dried lime peel. You see a butcher chew one between customers. Even street poets know better than to recite verse with onion breath. Back in the palace, you watch a palace physician concoct a rinse for a dignitary arriving from Persia. It contains lavender alum and a rare green citrus peel. He explains that it not only refreshes the breath, but elevates the mood of the tongue. You nod solemnly. That makes total sense. Later, during a diplomatic audience, you kneel beside your master. His voice is calm, his breath neutral, faintly sweet like a spring garden. You glance around and notice every ambassador has done the same. Breath here is politics, respect, presentation. And before the evening call to prayer, you rinse again. This time with warm water steeped in bay leaves. The simplicity suits you. The breath you carry into prayer, after all, should match the soul you hope to present. Clear, focused, and just a little fragrant. You close your eyes, exhale through your nose, and feel the coolness linger. The city hums below the palace walls, mosques silhouetted in twilight, and somewhere nearby, a spice grinder begins his work for tomorrow's batch of breath offerings. The heavy oak doors creak as you step into the tiled corridor of Hampton Court Palace. It's the reign of Henry VIII, and the year is 1544. The scent of roasted meats clings to the walls, but beneath it all, there's brandy, lots of it. As a low-ranking courtier, you're eager to impress and survive among the tutors. That means powdered ruffs, careful etiquette, and apparently mouthwash that could double as a cocktail. Your morning begins with a silver goblet filled with brandy, swirled with rosemary and cloves. It's warm, sharp, and more intoxicating than refreshing. But in the Tudor court, no one wants to smell like eel pie before a royal audience. You swish and spit into a chamber pot, already filled with something suspiciously pink, and hope it does the trick. The brandy burns slightly, but it's better than the alternative, chewing on burnt bread crusts or animal charcoal, both common among the lower classes. Tudor hygiene manuals list rinses made from wine vinegar, sage, and even crushed pearls for the rich, the poor. They often used stale ale and salt. Some physicians prescribed urine, yes again, but even the boldest nobles began drawing the line by the mid-1500s. Historians still argue whether these brandy-based rinses were medical or merely fashionable. But letters from the era reference sweetening the mouth before discourse and staining of the tongue with noble spice. In this world, you don't just want your breath clean, you want it courtly. At a midday banquet, you watch Henry himself tear into a leg of venison. Between courses, he drinks a rinse of red wine steeped in cinnamon and orange peel, and then spits discreetly behind a velvet curtain. Even kings, it seems, are not immune to the garlic from last night's stew. Later, a physician named Dr. Butts, no joke, insists you try a rinse made from honey vinegar and powdered alum. It stings, but he assures you it tightens the teeth in their sockets. You're not entirely reassured. Back in your quarters, you scrape your tongue with the tip of a pewter spoon. Common practice among courtiers, and chew a mix of dried parsley and fennel seeds. You heard Anne Boleyn once chewed cloves before every audience with the king. It didn't save her neck, but she probably smelled lovely. Before bed, you try a final rinse of chamomile tea and rose water, as prescribed by your chambermaid, who dreams of being a royal steward. It's soothing, sweet, and surprisingly pleasant after the brandy trauma. The fire crackles. Outside the river, mist swirls through the garden hedges. You lie back on your straw mattress, swish the last sip of warm rinse in your mouth, and whisper a prayer, not for your soul, but for breath, good enough to make it through another day in Henry's court. A breeze stirs the rice paper walls of your modest home in Edo, Japan. It's the early 1700s, and morning rituals have begun. Outside, neighbors sweep their steps and boil water for tea. Inside, you kneel before a lacquered tray, gently brushing charcoal dust from your lower lip. It's mouth cleansing time, the Edo way. You pick up your fukuhara, a tiny bundle of licorice root and dried bamboo fibers bound with silk thread. You chew slowly, releasing an earthy sweet flavor that tingles faintly on your tongue. The act isn't rushed. Like the tea ceremony, this is a moment of balanced simplicity and self-respect. In Edo period, Japan, oral hygiene was a quiet art form. Chewing sticks were common licorice plum wood. Even eucalyptus and rinses often included salt water mixed with ashes or tea. Charcoal powder was especially prized for its whitening and odor-absorbing properties. It left a gentle black hue on the teeth, which for some women was intentional. That's right, Ohaguro, the blackening of teeth wasn't just fashionable, it was hygienic and symbolic. Married women and geishas often stained their teeth using iron filings steeped in tea, a practice believed to strengthen enamel and show maturity. You, however, are still enjoying your unblackened grin for now. You lift a small porcelain cup filled with ugisu. No fun. A literal nightingale droppings, rinsed dried, and powdered, then mixed with rice water. Before you panic, it's not as gross as it sounds. The enzymes in the droppings were believed to lighten the skin and cleanse the mouth. You swish hold and spit discreetly into a paper-wrapped bowl. Historians still argue whether the droppings were more myth than mainstream, but they appear in 18th century apothecary records and kabuki dressing rooms alike. You walk through the garden to fetch fresh mint leaves for a midday chew. In markets, vendors sell rinses made from persimmon vinegar camphor oil or sakura bark. Samurai often favored stronger brews. Green tea mixed with salt and a touch of licorice believed to cleanse not just the mouth, but the spirit. In the geisha districts, preparation is everything. Performers swish with rose petal tea before a show, chew dried ginger between dances, and keep discreet jars of clove water tucked beneath their sashes. Your uncle, a temple monk, prefers pure water. The gods already know your breath, he says, but rinse it anyway. At twilight, after a long day in the scroll workshop, you prepare one last mouth rinse, a warm infusion of toasted rice and chrysanthemum. It smells like harvest, like autumn in silk. You swish slowly as cicadas drone outside and the lanterns flicker softly inside. You spit into the garden soil, letting the warmth settle behind your teeth. You smile in the mirror. Clean, faintly herbal, perfectly present. Red dust clings to your bare feet as you walk across the open scrubland under the early morning sun. You're in Arnhem Land, Northern Australia, thousands of years before colonists arrived. The eucalyptus trees sway gently, and in your hand is a freshly torn leaf, fragrant, sharp, and medicinal. You fold it and press it to your lips, chewing slowly. The leaf releases a pungent menthol-like aroma, filling your mouth with cool fire. This is bush medicine, passed down through generations of Aboriginal elders, and it's your morning breath freshener, cleanser, and protector. Among indigenous Australian groups, eucalyptus leaves were one of many native plants used for oral care. Others included tea tree river mint and native myrtle. These weren't just for flavor, they had antimicrobial properties long before that term existed. You spit into the grass, then crush another leaf and mix it with water from a nearby spring. The rinse is bitter and smoky, but invigorating. The elders say it keeps the mouth clean, the words clear, and the body in harmony. Historians still argue whether these oral practices were daily rituals or linked to specific ceremonies, but archaeological evidence suggests deep botanical knowledge, including plants used as antiseptics, pain relievers, and deodorizers. Breath-like body was part of the dreaming intertwined with land, story, and spirit. Later, under a paperbark tree, you watch an elder prepare a mixture for a coming-of-age ritual. Powdered charcoal, crushed quandong pits, and water steeped with bark. It's used to rinse the mouth and then painted onto the face symbol of strength and transformation. Your cousin picks a few berries from a shrub nearby. She offers you one sour at first, but soon sweet. For the mouth, she says, and for the wind in it. Even songlines, those ancient maps of memory and geography sung across the land, require clean, clear breath. Before singing, some performers chew on cooling herbs, believing it aligns the voice with ancestral resonance. Back in camp, a fire smolders. You add a handful of eucalyptus leaves, let them sizzle, then inhale deeply. The scent fills your mouth again, this time from the inside out. You rinse one last time with water, infused with crushed bark and ash, a smoky finish to a practice as old as the stars above. The air is dry. The cicadas begin, and as your breath rises fresh and tinged with tree and ash, it blends with the wind, a quiet offering to the world that has always known how to care for its people. The gaslight flickers against the beveled glass of the pharmacy window as you step into a London street thick with fog and coal smoke. It's 1879, and your mouth tastes like last night's kidney pie and pipe tobacco. Fortunately, or terrifyingly, you're living in the golden age of marketing madness. You pass a row of posters plastered on a brick wall. Mouth breath is murder. One screams, "Banish halitosis, immediate relief," advertises another with a drawing of a woman fainting into a man's arms. What's in these new miracle rinses? That depends entirely on which salesman you ask. Today, you're here to try the latest trend, Listerine. Originally invented as a surgical antiseptic, it was recently rebranded as a general-purpose germ killer, and most importantly, a mouthwash. You step into the apothecary, where a cheerful clerk in a waistcoat offers you a sample in a delicate glass. You swirl, sip, and gag slightly. It tastes like floor polish and black peppercorns, but you endure. This is progress. In Victorian England, public awareness of hygiene exploded alongside germ theory. People were suddenly terrified of invisible miasmas and putrefactive vapors. Mouthwash, once herbal and homemade, became industrial, scientific, and thanks to aggressive advertising, a moral necessity. Historians still argue whether the fear of bad breath was genuinely medical or the result of genius marketing. Some say halitosis was essentially invented by the pharmaceutical industry to sell product. But by the late 1800s, everyone from chimney sweeps to duchesses was rinsing with alcohol-heavy formulas laced with wintergreen and menthol. You read the back of your bottle borax alcohol oil of thyme and something called calomel. You're not sure what that last one is, but it sounds faintly radioactive. At dinner, a friend pulls out a silver-rimmed rinse glass and offers a mouthful of cherry-flavored odorine. It smells like perfume and medicine cabinets. You both agree it's dreadful, but you rinse anyway. Better that than the dreaded social death of corpse breath. Soon the shelves are filled with competition. Sozodont, Sanitol, Kolinos, each promising charm, love, and career advancement in a bottle. Even toothpaste makers get in on the action, releasing rinse companions in colors not found in nature. Meanwhile, herbalists and skeptics stick to tradition. Clove tea, saltwater vinegar. No need for French chemicals. Your neighbor grumbles while boiling bay leaves. My grandmother had breath sweet as strawberries, and she never touched borax. Still, the world is changing fast. Trains bring products from across the country. Catalogs sell 6-packs of rinse to the countryside. Dentists start recommending daily swishing as part of a modern gentleman's regimen. By nightfall, you sit at your writing desk, a glass of water steeped with lemon peel by your side. You swirl and spit into a blue and white ceramic bowl. It smells faintly of turpentine and hope. You glance once more at the poster on your wall, a smiling, clean-toothed man shaking hands with Queen Victoria, his breath wafting roses. You smile. Marketing may be absurd, but your mouth has never felt so scandalously fresh. You're staring into the mirror under fluorescent light, plastic bottle in hand, cap off. The label screams fresh blast in neon green letters, and a tiny explosion graphic assures you of 12-hour breath protection. Welcome to the 21st century. Mouthwash has come a long way from crocodile dung and mead ash swirls. Or has it? You take a swig. It's cold, minty, and impossibly blue. As you swish, you catch that same sting you might have felt in a Roman atrium, only this time, it's artificial menthol and benzalkonium chloride instead of fermented urine. You swish harder, faster. The commercials told you it's killing 99.9% of germs. What about that final 0.1%? Are they hiding under your tongue? Spit? There's a small satisfaction in the ritual, a crisp chemical cleanness. Your breath smells like a glacier that went to dental school. Modern mouthwash is marketed as clinical, sleek, and effective, but look closely and you'll see echoes of every era we've visited. Alcohol for sterilization, Roman inspiration, herbal blends, and clove oils straight out of Ottoman kitchens and Tang pharmacies. Charcoal powders are back rebranded with matte packaging and words like natural and detoxifying. Historians still argue whether today's formulations are meaningfully better or just chemically shinier. Some studies show modest benefits. Others warn of tissue irritation, enamel erosion, and microbiome imbalance. And then there's the ever-present suspicion: do we really need it? Or have we just been marketed into believing our mouths are battlefield zones? A glance down the drugstore aisle confirms we are deep in the age of choice. Whitening mouthwash, sensitivity mouthwash, foam mouthwash, even mood-specific flavors: lavender calm, citrus energized, cinnamon confidence. Whatever that last one means, your coworker swears by oil pulling. Your neighbor makes her own rinse from green tea and baking soda. And your teenage niece, she vapes watermelon menthol and insists that counts. Yet one thing remains constant: the social weight of breath. From Sumerian shrines to dating apps, how your mouth smells affects how you're seen, heard, loved. Clean breath is still a small promise we make to others that we're present, polite, prepared. You rinse one last time before bed. Just water now. Simple, soft, neutral. Your mouth is clean, your breath calm. You slip into the sheets, and as the world fades, you wonder, what will future humans think of our neon rinses and peppermint burns? Will they marvel? Will they cringe? Probably both. But one thing's certain: in every era, someone has stood at a basin, looked at their reflection, and swished. And now you're resting. The rinse is done. The last herbal trace fades gently from your tongue, and your breath slows with the quiet rhythm of night. Around you, history softens like candlelight. Sumerian clay bowls, rose, scented Ottoman flasks, pine smoke drifting through Mayan terraces, all dissolving into the haze of memory. You're not chewing on resin or swishing with vinegar anymore. You're just here in this moment, body still, mind gently drifting. The crackle of Viking fires, the chime of Tang Dynasty zither, strings the hush of monastic cloisters. They echo faintly behind your eyes, warm and distant. Take a long breath in. Let it out slowly. Let the past loosen its grip and fall behind like a cloak at the door. Your muscles soften, your jaw rests, your shoulders melt into the mattress. Inhale again, and this time think of a mint leaf, not the burning chemical kind, but the real one. Green, fresh, gently crushed between thumb and forefinger. Let that cool scent carry you somewhere safe and slow. You are not in the palace, nor the village, nor the market stall. You are floating in the gentle space between then and now, wrapped in silence, soothed by strangeness. And tomorrow, the world may spin fast, but for now, let it slow. Let the sleep come quietly, steadily, like an old friend drawing near.